so that's where we started. We are now at over 300,000 total users, 60,000 monthly active users, and we won some awards. So we won, in 2017, we won 4 of Google's Voice Awards on the Assistant platform and the top best voice assistant on the platform. LeadsCon, among a few others, and these are some of the partners we have. We're also featured on Google I/O 2018 for pushing their technology in some of their aspects. So we made a lot of mistakes to get to that, and I want to tell you what we did and what we learned from it, so that hopefully it's helpful to you. What I'm going to summarize to you is kind of some of the top learnings from over the 900 user testing interviews that I said, but that's not it. The user base, we analyze, we look at the raw data as well, in addition to the user interviews, and we have hundreds of thousands, millions of transcripts that we also review and assess. So, first lesson. We started on the Google platform before Assistant was even available on the phone, so we started with Google Home, and that was the first place we could deploy our product. And the experience and the feedback we got from a screen-based experience in that modality was different from just the voice-only experience. So I'm going to start with the voice, and we're going to go into the screen. So this is what we thought would happen when people interacted with Google Home. And basically we thought that everyone's going to be super excited, right? Cool technology, voice, it's pretty awesome. And this happened. So pretend that this is a Google Home, right? I would put this in front of users and say, okay, talk to it. And they would literally just be like this. What do I say? Just talk to it. Do I say hi? Just start talking. Say, start with, okay, Google, maybe there, right? Okay. Okay, Google, well, what else? And essentially, they felt stuck and couldn't go forward, right? New technology, I don't know how to interact with this, I've never seen this before, and I don't feel comfortable with it, right? And Google also was at the beginning, so just a lot of friction there in that interaction. So essentially, this was ultimately the reaction we would get, right? We were hoping for excitement because we thought it was cool. But this is what would happen with people. So the big lesson here is that the onus is on you, the designer. The platform will always have limitations, but you have to figure out how to circumvent those limitations and build something that guides the user down that path. I'm going to go into some examples of how we did that, and that takes us to our second lesson, where we basically, we're a startup, scrappy, resourceful. We started our user interviews in front of Trader Joe's. We hit the streets, and we basically just jumped people as they were walking out of the store and saying, hey, could you please give me some feedback on this thing? And so what we showed people was initially Credit Card Helper. That was our first flagship agent. And this is the user experience. So user comes in to Google Assistant, and they can say something like, give me the best credit card, or talk to Credit Card Helper. Credit Card Helper introduces itself, shows a menu, and then it essentially will ask you some questions and say, all right, what kind of card are you looking for? Or if you don't know, it will ask you questions like, what are your spending habits? Do you care about paying a fee? Do you care about having a balance? Do you care about simplicity? Do you want to play a rewards game? Any banks you love or hate? And based on that, it will give you recommendations on which cards are kind of best fit for you. So that was what we were testing with users. And this is one of the later versions of the product, but what we learned in talking to people is that they want to be guided, right? They don't know what questions to ask. I don't know, so I'm looking for the best cashback credit card, but how do I compare companies? How do I know that the best card from this company is better than this company? What are the top questions I should be even asking if I'm in the market for this thing, right? So that's part of the guidance, which comes with the subject matter expertise. And then we also learned that we have to pull them a little bit, right? We had to tell them what follow-up question to ask the bot to get them to the next place they wanted to get to. Because we know, if you're in the market for this product, what the next things are that you're looking for, so we had to gently kind of pull them down that path. And an implementation of this, if you're wondering, is A or B prompt, A and B prompts, right? Or various chips and buttons, but basically saying, hey, here, would you like to know about this, or would you like to know about this other thing? And you're kind of pulling them with you a little bit. But you have to balance this with being a guardian angel, right? So you gotta let them be, right? This is NLP, open-ended questions, let them ask whatever they want to ask, but you're kind of there, right? In case they ask something and fumble, or in case you have to train your agent, or in case, you know, you figure out one thing they're asking and you kind of realize, all right, they're asking this other thing, so I'm gonna guide them down this path, right? So 3 forces you're balancing, basically. You're guiding, you're kind of pulling and nudging, and then you're letting them be while you're kind of there. So 3rd lesson is people hate this, right? Very easy to get stuck in a voice experience, very easy to get stuck in loops. If it's voice, it's the same, and if it's on screen, it's the same. That, you know, essentially, if you're on a website, bunch of places you can go, right? Maybe it's a controlled landing page, or maybe there's like 2 buttons and that's all they're letting you do, but at least you can, you know, you have something, you have other areas you can be with. You can get stuck in this, right? So one thing we learned is that we have to implement some of the stuff that's happening in the digital world in the voice, and those are things like back buttons, right? Start over buttons, giving people a way out of wherever they're in if they feel stuck. And so the lesson is that just, you know, make sure that you have some solution to this. And the easiest ones are some ways to just go back, start over, go back to the main menu, for instance. All right, so this is the nightmare that we are trying to solve for in the financial space, right? You're looking for a credit card, and this is the hell you have to go through. You open 20 tabs, you're trying to compare cards. It's text, text, text everywhere. And unless you have an accounting, law degree, finance degree, it's really difficult to compare these products, right? They're not apples to apples. And so reams and reams and reams of information on this. So we want to make people's life easier. So we built a bot that does the data science for you. Like we look at 500,000 complaints to the CFPB, we look at JD Power consumer reports, we look at complaints, we look at we look at rewards quality rankings, and we do a whole bunch of data science. So after we ask you questions about your preferences, we match you to the best card out there. And so we started with saying, all right, well, here are the 2 cards that we recommend for you. People hated this. 2 was too little, right? Like going from an option of 1,000 cards to 2 just wasn't working. And so we realized that we have to find some sort of sweet spot number of products to show. So this brings me to the paradox of choice. Have you ever heard of the JAM study? You've heard of it. Okay, so I'm going to tell for the rest of the room. Basically, 2 conditions, right? They set up at a supermarket. In one case, there are 8 types of jam. In another case, 32 types of jam. In the case of 8 types of jam, fewer people come to taste the jams, but more people purchase. In the case of 32 types of jam, more people come to taste the jams, but fewer of them purchase. Consumer packaged goods companies know this, that there is a sweet spot of the number of products you should have on a shelf to invite people that doesn't paralyze them and overwhelm them in choice. And so we had to come up with that same number for us. So when it comes to credit cards, what do you think the sweet spot was? So it wasn't a 2.
7.
All right, so very close. So it was 5. And I'd say between 5 to 7 depending. So that's the
yeah, 5 to 7.
Yeah. So essentially the lesson here is that too much or too little choice is paralyzing. So the 5th lesson is I'm going to start with Siri, right? What we've learned in our user interviews is that Siri brings within her a lot of baggage. People remember the Siri experience and they think Google Assistant is going to be the same way. We know that's not true, they're very different technologies. But one thing that happened with Siri is that, what can I help you with should have been changed to, these are the things I can help you with, right? Like she was overpromised. And so people have that experience. And so you get things like, you get a spectrum. I love Siri, I hate Siri. She can't answer anything. So one important point here is to set expectations. If your bot promises to do everything, you will disappoint very quickly. So just be very clear on here are the specific things I can help you with, and then do a kick-ass job in those things, as opposed to pretending that you can do a broad spectrum of things. The other thing is that Don't pretend to be human. People hate this, and they'll figure it out, and they will resent you for it, right? So be upfront. I'm a bot, I'm a virtual assistant, whatever you want to call it, but don't mask that, because ultimately they're going to find out. Right? It's not difficult. And in order to kind of the reason people mask it is because they're trying to look a certain way and look that this is a really clean experience, but you're going to break, you're going to make mistakes, and just own up to them, right? So people will give you forgiveness if you're honest with them. So say something like, I'm so sorry, can you help me so I can do better next time, right? Or can you help me out with what you meant? Or I'm learning, as I get better as I go. Can you give me some feedback, right? So just being really honest and upfront about it. So the two lessons here: own up to your limitations and don't pretend to be human. So lesson 6, the same with people, right? You don't enjoy being in front of a person that just rambles on and on. Bots the same way. We're in the voice world. It's the same types of rules apply. So when it comes to voice-only devices, if Alexa and Google Home just go on and don't give you a chance to stop it or say something, you're just staring at it, waiting for the pause to say the next thing, it's a terrible experience, right? Because you just want to get to your point, and she's not letting you. And there are skills and actions out there where they're essentially by big companies that are voice recordings, and they just go, right? That's not a good user experience. This wasn't meant to be a radio, right? In that voice interaction. So important to just keep things very concise. So we thought, well, what about the screen experience? And when you're dealing with financial products like we are, there's a lot of rich information you want to give people, right? You want to talk about a company and say, here are the benefits of it, and here's the downsides of it, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of information to be given. So we would, start with something like this, and people hated it again. So we would say, okay, well, I know you don't like this much text. What if I break it up for you? I'll use some UI elements of text, give you some line spaces. You can skim this, right? No, there's a lot of text. I still don't want this. Then we pared it down. Well, what about this, right? Is this okay? And we'd still get negative feedback until we would come to something like that. Again, difficult to do, right? Because you're dealing with complex products, you're trying to give a lot of information, but nobody likes to read anymore, right? People don't even listen to voicemails anymore. They just text each other, but it's quick back and forth. And the challenge is to be super, super concise. I think right now is a beautiful world for copywriters, people who are in the writing space, because if you can take ideas and make them super concise, then you've won, and you know how to communicate in this medium really well in the way people want. So if there's one lesson you take away today in the 15 I'm going to give you, this one is the one that comes up repeatedly. Conciseness, we hear it in all of our interviews. Concise, keep it short. That's the one I look at. 7. So this was interesting. So, we're all, I am at least, gung-ho about artificial intelligence, right? I should be, I'm in the space. And I thought people would find that cool. Like, an AI agent is comparing all these products and there's all this knowledge base, is giving you this information. Like, that's super cool. Where we implemented this is our bots would introduce themselves. Hi, I am Cass, an artificial intelligence agent, and I'm here to help you, blah, blah, blah. And we got a lot of mixed feelings over AI. And it also depends on the demographic too. So it depends on where you are in education level, where you are in background, how much you know about AI. But things that would come up with that AI, it was categories of things. So from one side, some people thought AI was like a differentiator, right? Nobody has that. But from another side, it was, I really don't know what it is. It's kind of vague, right? Or I'm freaked out by it because there's all this other noise that's going on around it. And so what we learned is virtual assistants, these other labels work a little bit better. So AI makes big mixed feelings. That's the lesson here. So we, lesson 8 is on essentially compelling people to listen to you. So we do a lot of data science, as I said. We compare a lot of pieces of data. We weight the data to give people the best recommendation after we ask them questions about their preferences. And what we learned is that, we would introduce, so I'll give you the example of credit card helper. He would say, hey, I'm Kaz, I help you find the best credit card. I'm an AI agent. This was back when we didn't know that. I'm an AI agent, and I do all this data science. So he would say that at the beginning, and then in the About Me section, you could essentially learn more, we would deep dive, whatever, and then we would recommend the credit cards. Once we recommended the credit cards, the feedback was, well, why specifically are you recommending these credit cards, right? And then we would say, okay, well, all right, let's add something. Spirit of conciseness, right? Well, this credit card has better rewards than this other credit card. Still wasn't enough. Why are you recommending these two to me? Because we had to add to that. Well, this credit card is also good in these capacities versus this one. Still not enough to me. Why are you recommending? Until we decided to come up with actual card scores. Like we started making cards out saying, all right, here's how we weighted it. Here are the pieces of information that went into picking this card for you, to just really give a logical reasoning as to why we're recommending these products. They want to know why. Why are you telling them this, right? So just as with a human being, you want to see credibility with people, like you want to know, why should I listen to you and believe what you're saying? Bots the same thing. So build credibility. The other thing what we learned in our user interviews is that people want to know who they're talking to. So we did a bunch of mock-ups before we did builds, and in these mock-ups, in one version of them, the AI agent would just say, you know, I help you find the best, blah, blah, blah. But the craving was like, well, this seems like a personality. Does it have a name? Does it have a gender? Who is it? What is it doing? So they wanted more. They wanted to be introduced to this agent. Like, who is this entity that I'm speaking to? It's different from what I want to know. And so we started not only building kind of personalities and profiles around them, but she would introduce herself, right? In this case, Carrie. I can help you find the best car insurance, and then say exactly what she did. So she's greeting, she's giving her name, and then she's saying functionally what she's doing, and that was satisfying. So tell them who they're talking to, and then you know what it is going to do for them. Don't brag. So this is key. When we started building our agents, we said, oh, well, we just won 4 Google Awards. If we slap that on there, everybody wants to use us, right? Like Google's a big shot, whatever. People didn't like it. They're like, it sounds braggy. And we're like, okay, well, all right, fine, I'll erase this thing that we worked so hard to get, and I'm thinking that this is going to sway you towards people, just they didn't like it, right? Same thing, nobody likes a bragger with human interaction, right? Nobody likes fake anything, brag anything, arrogant anything, so the same conveys to these agents. So you want them to be all the qualities of the person you like: humble, authentic, helpful, you know, in service. The other thing we learned was on simple things like, you know, how it speaks and how it writes, right? With a multimodal experience, you have both. So what we learned that if you have grammar, punctuation, spelling, sentence structure issues, right? Whether in the way that it talks to you, the sentences don't make sense, or on screen, you know, you're missing periods and commas, you have spelling mistakes, you look like you were made in a basement, right? Like there's 2 guys and a dog in a basement built this thing, therefore I don't trust you, you're not affiliated with a trustworthy company. So these minor details really, really matter when it comes to voice, both in the way that speaks and what you see on screen. Lesson number 12. So in the digital landscape, right, in like the web world, you have all of these other tools that can help you communicate with people. So for instance, if you have a form, right, and you want to ask people a bunch of questions, on a website experience, you have progress bars, right? You can tell them, you know, what percentage is done. You can have some example of that. Neither in a human conversation nor in a voice conversation with an agent do you have that. So you have to do it verbally, right? You have to say things like, you know, all right, this will take 60 seconds up front, right? Halfway there, we're almost done. Just like in a human interaction. Like if you sit in front of someone and you have a meeting, you want to know how long is this going to take. You want to know where you are in the meeting, how much more time is left, right? Again, concept of people feeling stuck and you know, just wanting to know how things are going. So, lesson 13, how does your bot carry itself? You're building a personality, right? This is not just like a website or an app. You're building a personality. personality that speaks and talks, and one day we'll get very sophisticated with tones and all sorts of things. So make sure that it doesn't act moody or like it's going from one side to another, just super funny at one time and then super serious at another time, right? You just want to pick a personality and stick with it and just follow that conciseness, because otherwise people are like, I don't know, 2 minutes ago it was just giving me some off jokes, I didn't even like the jokes, and now it's being serious. So just stick to some personality. But what we found, at least with financial products, what was important to people is they wanted something polite, they wanted someone who was professional, right? They wanted someone who was charming, helpful, and very conversational, right? So forget all the textbook language and think about how a conversation would go with a friend. Avoid the moody bot. So next to last point. Okay, so before I show you that, we learned after building these things, and as they got more and more complex, that we needed to somehow to grab hold of what they were, right? When you build a bot, the best thing you can do is have a blueprint for it, right? And a blueprint for what the components are, because it's going to start to get very complicated. And if you have a large team, you want to make sure you can communicate with the rest of the team what this thing does, who it's targeting, etc. So we created blueprints, and these are the things that we include in our blueprints of the bot. So what are the calls to action? What are you trying to get people to do? What's the depth of the bot, and what's the breadth of it? Depth, so how deep does it go in answering your questions? How deep does it go in the subject matter? And what's the breadth of it? How wide of a series of questions or category can it cover in helping people? What are the main intents that you're trying to provide a solution to, and then what are the flows that come after that? What's the personality of it? What's the mission? Who's the target? Implicit invocation and discovery, if you're on Google right now, if Alexis still doesn't have it. Functions, and she does have it, but functions and features, the product roadmap, put it right in there, dashboards that you have, and then transcript analysis. And essentially, you just want this to be like 20 pages, and you can link out to the other docs, but it's like this central place where it's very clear what your bot does, who it is, who it's talking to, what problem it's solving, and then what tools you're using to assess its behavior and performance. So blueprints and roadmaps are crucial. Last lesson. So there's some interesting things we learned with how people interact with these bots. So when we did transcript analysis, it started getting funny after some point. So people would ask our financial bots, what did I do this morning? What did I, human person talking to you, bot, do this morning? Like, can you, because they're curious, right? They don't know what the technology is capable of right now, right? So it's asking for, asking it to see if you push it that far. What is the name of my boyfriend? These are exact transcripts that came out of our bots. Are you smart? What is the weather going to be tomorrow? Predict to me what's going to happen tomorrow. Who made you? It's an obvious one. Do you have a birthday, right? Curious. They think it's kind of like a person, so does it have the elements of a person? And then they get frustrated with it, like emotional with it. Did you not hear me? I said this thing 5 times. One of our bots, we made a mistake. We just, it said, I'm a guy that helps you find the best product, but the bot was a girl. And so I saw this extremely long transcript with this person going back and forth with the bot. So I'm a guy, and then the person comes back and says, well, you said you're a guy, but I can see you're a girl. And then fall back in touch, right? I'm sorry, I missed that. I said, you said you're a guy, but it's obvious you're a girl. Well, sorry, I didn't miss that. I said that you said you were a dude, but it's very obvious that you're a girl. Why are you saying that? And he just went back and forth for like 10 lines on this thing, trying to push this thing, and we're just looking at it laughing. But seriously, people think that ultimately this can potentially, this is some personality behind what a digital experience is, and they push the technology that way. So they will push it for you. And then very, very emotional get out of here, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And this is another piece of transcript that we saw. It's a computer, right? You're talking to it this way. That says something about the potential and the opportunity that these agents have, like how far you can go with them if you provide a really good experience. So last lesson, people will push the technology, so be ready for it, obviously. Okay, that's the end of my lessons, but last point I want to make, we're in the first inning of voice, right? Long way to go. Right now, 23% of all mobile searches in voice. It's going to go to 50% by a lot of estimates by 2020. That's a year and a half from now. So the cool thing is we get to co-create this space together with the big giants and really push it to the capabilities that it has. But huge opportunity, huge potential, and we're all super excited for it.
So I want to open up the floor for questions. Does anyone have questions that they would like to ask Henry? Okay, to you.
Yes.
One's just pragmatic, are the slides going to be available by chance?
Yeah, I can make one of it.
And the other one was on the 14th one you listed, the projects and stuff. Would you talk a little bit about, you did all these things, I mean, what your lessons learned, this is the result of your lessons, what lessons brought you to decide these are the most important things, which is a key and why?
Sure. So that's a good question. So, if this was done before, right? If the bot space in this way doesn't exist, it hadn't existed before, right? If it had been done before, and let's say, our team went into a company that was building this stuff, they would have probably just handed us a list of, all right, here are the things we monitor, and your brain, you just turn your shut off your brain and you say, all right, well, this is what the company looks for. I'll add these other things and go. This was not that. These were by necessity, right? Because at the end of the day, if there are no calls to action, for us, there is no business and there is no purpose for the agent, right? It has to help you do something. You have to guide people towards some action. So that became really important. The depth and breadth, discussions about how deep do we want the bot to go, right? How broad of a spectrum do we want it to cover? How many questions should it answer? How much knowledge should it have? What's necessary, really? What's nice to have? What do people want? So all of those discussions, you have a lot of back and forth with your team on what people want, and you do a lot of user interviews, and you can choose to invest a lot of resources based on what users tell you. But it became crucial to agree on that, right? Main intents and flows, that's an obvious one. The personality stuff, we learned that they really think they're talking to someone that has a personality, so we gotta make it. Implicit invocation, that's huge for us. So all of our traffic is organic. We don't pay for any of our traffic. And so, essentially getting the voice SEO traffic from Google was huge. And then the other stuff like the dashboards, the product roadmaps, again, all kind of stuff you see with visual products, but they help us measure performance. They help us, organize the cross-functional teams. So they became very important. But as time goes on, we may add to this list or modify it too.
Hi, great presentation. Thank you. My question is, I read some articles related to voice UX, and many people prefer to building a customer journey map.
Yes.
First you build the customer journey map and then design the voice.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Yes, good question. So one of the things, we do build customer journey maps, and where it stemmed from for us that we modified was looking at, all right, looking for a credit card is not a new thing, right? We're just implementing it in a new platform, right? When you look for a credit card, you go on the digital scape. So in our original user interviews, we started watching people go through finding a credit card online, right? And then what that user journey was. And then we thought about how can we make this super, super efficient in what we do, and how can we condense time? So as a result of that modification, so one testimonial I got unsolicited. I met this grad student on the UC Berkeley campus. His name was Corey, and he's like, hey, I prayed with Credit Card Helper, I thought was cool. I'm like, give me feedback, what did you think? And he said, well, you know, a year ago, I was in the market for a credit card. I spent an hour and a half researching credit cards. I came up with a short list. And when I played with Credit Card Helper, you guys gave me the same short list that I spent an hour and a half in 2 to 3 minutes, right? And so the way we got to that was just looking at what is the current user behavior in that normal world. How can you leverage this technology to make it to optimize for it, make it fast and efficient, and then implement it there. And then you look at other opportunities that like voice gives you, where you can kind of enhance it. But the journey map is crucial, for sure.
So you care to elaborate a bit more on your thoughts on personification, for instance? You know, I can think of ways to make it less personal, like, you know, never use the first person,
Yes.
have a gender-neutral voice, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Maybe even a Hollywood robot voice. I thought would be kind of cool. So
Sure.
it would be identifying itself as robot.
Sure.
But you seem to have gone for something a little more personal. So could you care to elaborate on the how you made your choices about personification?
Sure.
It has that expectation danger with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, it depends, we are, you know, we don't work for a large corporation that already has a brand that's thinking about, you know, what is the extension of my brand in 3D off of the page, right?
Right.
Which voice becomes. And so we had a lot of liberty and freedom to explore that. If you're a big company, you have to think about those things, right? My past life was working with Fortune 500 companies, and you just can't just roll with it and pick whatever. Those are important decisions to make, because it's a personality aspect of your brand now, right? But for us, what we learned is that, you know, in all of the user interviews we did tons of mock-ups where we would show people no face, no personality, no name, nothing, compared to when it had it, you know, it had a name, it had a face, it was greeting, and we saw that we delighted people. They felt intrigued by it, right? It felt cooler. They tended more towards it. So that's one part of it. Competence is really important too. You can't just be cute. You have to know what you're doing, right? Otherwise,
Well,
especially
you could be cute and incompetent.
yeah.
Like,
So
a,
both of
like
them.
a frog or something.
Like the frog. Sure. So both of them together. But it was all the user testing that we did that led to the fact that people wanted. However, like for instance, with one of our bots, Mortgage Calculator, it's a calculator, and we kept it more towards a bot because it's a logical calculator, right? So we thought, all right, instead of making this a person, let's make this more bot-like, and we took it in that direction.
I often wonder how companies who create bots like this in specialized verticals like finding a credit card or other kind of bots will compete with larger brands who are looking to extend their brand voice, like NerdWallet, for example, right? Like, what if they were to create a chat bot that did the same thing with their years of data across millions of customers? How would you differentiate yourself, or would it be a partnership, or?
Yes. So we are doing what NerdWallet does in voice, right? And the thing is, though, we talk to all the financial companies. We've partnered with a lot of them. We've talked to a lot of them. We've talked to the NerdWallet acquisition team too. And the thing is that we feel like we have a great head start against these companies, because building an AI voice agent is a completely different paradigm than building a website with content and articles, right? It's a completely different set of rules. As you saw, 15 lessons, I just picked like the top fraction. Very difficult to build a really, really great voice agent. And so, you essentially have to invest in a large team. So could they one day maybe invest in an AI team and have, sure, a big company with lots of resources, but from where we sit, we're at least 18 months ahead of them if they decide to do that. They NerdWallet did build a couple of agents internally. They stopped it because it was difficult, right? You really need a team that knows what they're doing. And so, by the time we get there, by the time they get there, we have a lot of learnings ahead of us that we think will give us some barrier.
I want to add, this is going to be our last question. We'll have questions at the end, but I want to introduce our next speakers. Yes.
Yeah, you can come talk to me after. Yeah.
I have 3 questions.
You have 3 questions, go for
So
it.
I really like the learnings that you shared. So I'll go for I think the most important question that I had. You talked about the paradox of choices, right?
Yes.
And reaching the sweet spot.
Yes.
And so I was thinking, is there a way to allow users to choose their sweet spot? Like maybe we can start saying that, okay, we have 3 options. We show them 3 credit cards and then give her an option to if she wants more.
Yes.
So is that an option that you should?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can, I mean, you can certainly display some number of options and just say more options and have them go there. I think that's a good way to do it because then you're giving, like right there, you're allowing them as opposed to, what I thought what you were gonna say was, I give them 3 and then later I can give them more, but they may leave, right? So in that sense, you can see that and then you can test it to see, you know, would you like more options? Would you like more options? And just see where that goes. And the other thing I would monitor besides the click on the options is, all right, did this person convert or not? Because it's one thing to want to see more options, but if you're not converting, then you might be overwhelming them.
Or you may go the other way around also. You may show her a lot of options
Yes.
and then say, okay, if you want limited options, we want a little bit more information about it, and then maybe.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes, yes.
Shall I go with this?
Yes, go for it.
So about the learnings, this was really intriguing and
Thank you.
really helpful. One thing I figured is that maybe some of the learnings are a little bit dichotomic to each other.
Okay,
For example, we talked about being concise, while we also talked about we need to build credibility,
Yes.
which is about divulging more information.
yes,
You talked about that we shouldn't try to wrap us as a machine, while we need to personify also.
Yes.
So these learnings a little bit dichotomy.
welcome to our world. Yes, it's super challenging.
Yeah, that's made it more intriguing.
Absolutely, it's super challenging. Like, it's like, these are discussions we have every day. These are things that we test on every day. And the space is so new. It's all being worked out, right? But it's constant struggle. I want to give you a lot of information, but I know you don't want to read. So how can I give you this in a stepwise or, you know, like constantly. And we iterate, we do a lot of iterative testing. So our user testing is, we do weekly iterative user testing. As for some products, it's bi-weekly, and you know, keep sending it out, iterate, modify, and then you know, to get to a point where people are really happy with it.
I'll take it as a secret sauce that you're not using.
Well, it's not the secret
No,
sauce.
I'm joking, man.
Yeah, so the honest thing is that we're learning too, and all we can do is, there's some intuitive senses that we've developed over time and experience, but really you just talk to your end users and you get to that point.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
All right, guys.